Today of His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada, who is, as everybody knows, the spiritual master of His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada, Acharya, ISKCON. On the order of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada went all over the world, preached, saved us all. So we are grateful to Srila Prabhupada, unlimitedly, eternally grateful. We are also unlimitedly, eternally grateful to all the Acharyas, by whose desire we have not only been saved from the darkness of ignorance, but engaged in the topmost activity of spiritual life, namely carrying on the mission of the Acharyas to reach Krishna consciousness throughout the world. Now, I'm presuming that most devotees here are familiar with the life story of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So, I'm going to tell some stories which I collected from some of his disciples. A few years ago, I thought that probably most of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's disciples have already passed away. And whoever is there, they're not going to be here much longer. So I thought to interview them and to collect stories, just like so many Prabhupada disciples were interviewed for compiling the Prabhupada Lilamrita. So I thought better late than never, even though most of the Prabhupada's disciples have passed away. I thought to interview some of them. And I was able to meet most of those who are still, or who were still present at that time. One of them in particular, his name is Jyoti Shekhar. He's living as a householder in Orissa. He was very pleased to meet me, and I sat with him on different occasions for several days and collected many pastimes and anecdotes. He said that I've been carrying these in my heart for many years, and I was quite disappointed. I thought I would die without these pastimes being broadcast to the world. But now I'm very happy that you've come, he said to me. He said, I'm like the goods storehouse, and you're like a train bringing it. So still I haven't published that as a book, but still somehow or other by the power of Maya, my own incompetence, I will happen to publish it. It's still in the long process of editing. I have many of these stories on computer disk that I've printed out. It seems that the disk also is very much so I don't have all of them. I have many stories. They're not in any particular order, like that, so to speak. Where to begin? Of course, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, as his very name says, he has established that the Siddhanta, the ultimate conclusion of scriptural knowledge, is bhakti, pure, unmotivated devotional service to Lord Sri Krishna. And particularly as the pranam mantra to him states, Shilupano Viruddha, Abhasiddhanta. One of his particular tasks is also Madhurya Pranadi, Shilupano Bhaktidai. Following the line of Rupa Goswami, he gives pure devotional service at the highest level, but also in his service to Rupa Goswami, he destroys or he smashes all the wrong conclusions, the wrongly propagated conclusions of devotional service that are against the conclusion of Rupa Goswami. Now, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is very controversial and revolutionary because now we're sitting here and it's accepted more or less by the general public, general body of intellectuals, and scholars of religion in India and throughout the world, that Gaudiya Vaishnavism is represented by Srila Prabhupada, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. But he had to fight to establish himself. At that time, of course, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur had been preaching, and Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur had given the idea about the intellectual classes that Krishna consciousness is not simply, as Vivekananda said, Vivekananda quoted that this was the general idea among the intellectual classes, especially in Bengal, that this Krishna Bhakti is a sex thing, because Krishna consciousness has been so much misrepresented that it was expected that if someone is a follower of Lord Chaitanya, that he is a devotee, that he has illicit relations with women. So, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur had given that idea. Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur established that idea very strongly, and he fought throughout his life against the wrong teaching of the false devotees, and he was very, very strong against it. Even Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur wrote very strongly against it. But in his personal dealings, he didn't create enmity with others. Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur did. And he even crossed his own boundaries in this regard. When they were living in Puri, when Vimala Prasad, his name was given Vimala Prasad. Vimala Devi is the deity of Durga Devi in Puri. So the son of Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, Vedanta, is given the name Vimala Prasad, who has come as the mercy Vimala Prasad. So when he was a young man living in Puri, he was fighting very strongly against this Nidai Gauraraj Nisham. There's this mantra which is chanted, not actually mantra, but some so-called chant, which is chanted by a false sampradaya, which was headed out by, that was founded by one Babaji, Radhananda Babaji, and his followers Radhananda Babaji. So they were very prominent, and they still are quite prominent in Orissa and Bengal. And they would go everywhere and chant this Bhajanita Gaurade Shanta Hare Krishna Hare Ram, which is a very catchy tune, but it is not, according to Siddhanta, it's not given in Shastra, it's not given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And they have many wrong ideas. They think that Nityananda is Radharani, and they have many funny ideas. It is something which appears to be bhakti, but it is not. It is actually an offense, because although it has all the external appearances of being bhakti, because the idea is wrong, because there's rasa bhas, because there's a mixing of mellows. They want to put Lord Nityananda with Radha and Krishna. You know, they say this is Lord Nityananda is actually Radharani. So Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, there are so many reasons. Anyway, he stood very strongly against that. He used to make protests. He told his followers, because this was later in life, but he was knowing that he was protesting against that. He used to say this, the chua means a rat. This is like the chanting of rats. So there was so much, he was creating quite disturbance, because people in general, even learned scholars and devotees, they couldn't see what was wrong with it. They thought, well, it's very nice. These people that renovating temples and they're chanting Hare Krishna, they wear tilak, and they're very good people. What's wrong with them? Because there was something basically wrong. So many things appear to be right. But because there was something basically wrong, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur debated. Therefore he fought against it fully. Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur requested to God, please go to Bengal. Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, he was, in his early life, he was trained by his father in all the aspects of printing and publishing. Later, in Kaka, in Orissa, he established a press just in the area of the deity. And he said, when the press was first installed, he had a ceremony, just like installing a deity. So he offered his full obedience. He said, this is the Brihadanga, this is completely transcendental. This is, as this worship, this working of the press, this is as good as the deity worship. He said that in my childhood, I was trained by my father, I was trained by him in all aspects of press work. And actually, even if something went wrong with the machine, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur corrected, he knew how to correct the printing. Every aspect he knew. About writing, how to write, how to proofread, how to edit, how to typeset, how to print, all the aspects of printing he knew. So he used to tell that, my father trained me in proofreading, but I don't only proofread books. I proofread people. I proofread religions. I proofread the world. I find a mistake and I put it correct. And he said, I was born in Karkakalaka, which means there's some crab. He said, just like a crab catches people and pinches them. So in the same way, I catch, if there's something wrong, I catch that and pinch it and put it right. So he was very strong. He didn't compromise in any way. Even people used to protest to him about so many different things. He used to, especially the loud chanting of Hare Krishna. Now it was somehow or other the Sahajiyas, they had decided, and it was spread throughout the whole of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement was apparently in the hands of these Sahajiyas, Jatosais, the hereditary Goswamis. So they had decided in their envy that chanting of Hare Krishna should not be done loud. That which should be done loud, in which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to preach, because they're actually envious of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and they don't want people to be benefited by his movement. They make a show of being his followers and accept disciples for their own filling their belly business. But the actual benefit of chanting Hare Krishna loudly, they wanted to stop that. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura, he reintroduced that we should chant Hare Krishna loudly. And there was so much protest. Why are you doing this? And of course there is evidence from Shastra, just like Rukasari in his Chaitanyashtika, describing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Hare Krishna you chant. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was loudly chanting Hare Krishna. But one time there was a big meeting called in, I think it was in Kata, in Orissa somewhere. So there were so many pundits called, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati didn't go himself. He sent some of his sannyasi followers. And when they were up, he told them, they asked, what should we say? When people they're going to say, it says, nowhere in Shastra do we find that Lord Chaitanya was chanting Hare Krishna loudly. Even, of course, in Chaitanya Bhagavat it's mentioned that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was telling everyone to chant Hare Krishna. But they can't directly find any evidence. They're saying that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was chanting in Kirtan, and here we find him chanting so many things in Kirtan, but not Hare Krishna, according to the Sahajis. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati told them that you go and tell them this, that when we're chanting Hare Krishna, if you see this rational analysis of this, how this mantra is set up, that is Sambodha, means in Sanskrit grammar there are different cases. The first case is Sambodha when you're calling, like in English you'll say, Oh Krishna, Hey Krishna. So in Sanskrit when you say Oh Krishna, when you're calling out to somebody, you just say Krishna. There's nothing to precede it or to follow. Krishna, that is the way of calling out somebody. So he kept to tell all the people that chanting Hare Krishna, it is in this form, therefore we're calling out to Krishna, therefore we should call out. Tell them that. So they went and all the people weren't convinced. But Bhaktisiddhanta said, that's all. Just tell them. There was so much protest against him, especially his brother, Lalita Prasad, who was his blood brother. He was very much akin in his preachings and teachings to the Jatosais, the caste Goswamis, and to the so-called Babajis of Vrindavan and Navadvip. Now, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was not against Babajis per se, but most of the Babajis at that time were bogus. They were not actual followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Some of them, there was Vamshidas Babaji was accepted by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and in Vrindavan there was one Ramakrishna Babaji. So some he accepted, but mostly he didn't like the Babajis, and they didn't like him. And they brought so much protest, and incited by Lalita Prasad, they said that you're not following Bhaktivinoda Thakur. They used to give Siddha Pranali, they used to tell people would come to them, and immediately they would tell them that, well, you're following Krishna Lila, you're a peacock or a parrot or something like this. And in this way they cheated people. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati stood against this, and he pointed out the faults in many essays and in his preaching. He wrote, just as Madhvacharya wrote the Mayavad Shabdadushan, pointing out 100 faults in Mayavad. So he pointed out the Prakritarasa Shabdadushan, the 100 faults of those who want to say that the rasa of Krishna Lila, that can be understood when one is still on the Prakrita level, when one is on the mundane level, when he is not transcended the modes of material nature. So he pointed out the faults of this, and there was some backup. There was a book printed by Babaji in Vrindavan, criticizing Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. All the things he was not following Bhaktisiddhanta. Actually, in many ways it seemed that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he had introduced something new. The Sahajiyas of Vrindavan, they criticized him that how is it that you are giving Brahman initiation when your Guru didn't give you Brahman initiation? Because Gauri Shaka and Babaji Maharaj, he gave initiation, he gave the name to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Vashakambi Devi Das. He gave the name. And he didn't give any beads because Gauri Shaka and Babaji himself didn't use beads. He simply gave, here's your name and here's some dust and other initiation. So, he didn't give you Brahman initiation. How are you giving Brahman initiation? None of the followers of Bhaktivinoda Thakur did that. Why are you doing this? Why are you giving Brahman initiation? Why are you giving sannyas initiation? How are you taking sannyas? No one gave you sannyas. So, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he wrote a book in reply Purva Bhakta Priyanatha Purva Bhakta Priyanatha Pratyuttara. His language was very high. And a reply to the opponent, Priyanatha, because the person who wrote that book was called Priyanatha. So this book, quite a big book, but the essence of that, he said that Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, he has come on a mantra. He has come to this world for preaching, and he has told me to establish Daivigana Shramdhana. So I'm doing that. I'm on his order. I'm preaching and I'm giving people initiation as Brahmins and sannyasis. And he said that people may criticize me, but no one can do bhajan like me, and no one can preach like me. Jai Radha Madhava Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He said, let them, even there are so many Babajis who are doing bhajan, but no one could do bhajan as he was doing. Before he came out, he was preaching, but then he came to Mayapur. In his youth, he was preaching, but at one point he became profoundly disgusted by all the Sahajiyas, their insincerity. And that even though he pointed out all their faults, he stood against them, they weren't interested. So he came, I think it was for 9 years. He lived in Mayapur, and he was performing very severe austerities and chanting Hare Krishna day and night, and living in the lotus feet of Gauri Shaka and Prabhuji Maharaj. So then even later, when he established his mission for preaching, even then he was always chanting many rounds, studying very deeply. He studied Chaitanya Charitamrita 100 days time, Chaitanya Bhagavat 100 days time. He was like an ocean of scriptural knowledge. He could quote on any shastra and give the correct meaning. This is the real meaning of an acharya in the true sense of the term. One who is vastly acquainted with the shastra and what is their meaning. So, even when he was preaching widely, but still he spent much time in his bhajan. He used to say that whenever I wake up in the night, I simply get up. If I wake up, I get up. That's all. He was always, no one could see when he would get up. He would always be up before everybody else. So, of course, he was very strong in exalting his devotees to be very strong in their bhajan and their preaching. At the same time, he didn't like anything artificial. One time, one brahmachari, he wanted to chant a lot, he didn't want to sleep much. So he tied his shika. You see where they keep the beds, they have bamboos to put the mosquito net on. So he tied his shika to the bamboo so that he wouldn't fall down like this. So one time he was tied up like this for his chanting, and anyway he was. So Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur came and untied his shika and told him, don't try anything like this. He wanted his devotees to be learned, but at the same time, he didn't want artificial scholarship and artificial attitude. Some of his followers, they were very scholarly and studying so many books. He would tell them that what is the use of your studying all these different Vedas? Who's going to listen anyway? Who cares for all your knowledge of the Vedas? Just go out and preach. Not that he didn't want people to know. They would go out in the morning, door to door, preaching. And in the afternoon, they would come back and every day they would have Ishtagoshis in the mud. And in the beginning, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur trained his disciples, and then later on some of the more senior ones, they had this system. They would go door to door, and they would have magazines and little books. They would ask for donations. So naturally people would say, well, why? And they would preach that you should give to us because. And then people would bring so many objections. This method they had going door to door. So if people couldn't answer, if the brahmacharis were going out preaching couldn't answer the objection, then they would come, they would tell them, please, I don't know the answer to this. I'll consult with Guru Maharaj. Tomorrow I'll find the answer. So every day they would have, after lunch prasad, they would have Ishtagoshti, and they would read, especially Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur recommended, that all the devotees they become very much acquainted with Jaiva Dharma and Chaitanya Shikamya. So every day they would have some reading on that, and then they would take questions. So what questions did you meet today? And then they would give the answers, and they would go back and here's your answer. Like this. So this way they were trained for preaching. They were preaching and collecting funds for different projects. But Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, he was very particular how funds were collected. One sannyasi, he was in Bombay, and he went to the house of one rich man, and the wife brought him some sweets to eat, and the sannyasi said, no, I can't take this, I can't accept your food. I can't accept your food unless you give us so many thousand rupees donation. Because in the Chaitanya Math, the devotees are there, they're having much difficulty because there are no tube wells. So you must give some donation for establishing a tube well. How can I take when the devotees are suffering? So then the wife, because in Hindu custom it's understood that if a guest comes to your house and he doesn't take any food, then you'll get it's a very bad thing for you. You'll get a very bad reaction. So apparently he was forcing. So he gave a donation. But when Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur heard about that, he was not very pleased. He was not happy. Another time, one Lord Maharaj, in Cuttack, he went out collecting in the market areas. Now in Maharaj, in Cuttack, he went out collecting in the market areas. Now in the market there are so many Marwaris. Marwaris are a business community in India. And usually, not only Marwaris, but any business people, they'll be evading on income tax. So Lord Maharaj went to see the income tax collector in Cuttack. And he asked that you please come with me and let's go to the Marwaris and make some collections. Because he was thinking if the Marwaris see him, then they'll be afraid that if they don't give a donation, then the income tax collector is going to get on the case. So the income tax collector said, no, I can't. So he said, all right, well, can you do one thing? Can I borrow your car and I can drive back to the mosque in your car? So he said, okay. So he went back to the mosque, but he took a diversion through the bazaar on his way back. And he just happened to stop at all the shops of the different Marwaris. And he told them, I'm just coming to the income tax collector. He came in his car, and I'd like to make some collection. So this way he made quite a good collection. And he came back to the mosque. And he got out of the car, and he was very jubilant because he collected so many dhotis, so many pots and pans, so much money and so many things. And he called out, Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivraya Dasara Shruta Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Jai over and over again. And then Bhaktisiddhanta he came up on the veranda, he used to live on the roof of the ashram, he came on the veranda to see what all the noise was about. Then when Bodhai Maharaj saw him, he offered him full obeisances. He was very happy that now I got something big to offer to my Guru Maharaj. So Saraswati Thakura, he called him up and he asked what's it all about, and he brought him so many dhotis, so many items of food, so many things. And he asked, how is this being collected? So he told him everything. So Saraswati Thakura was very upset, he was very sorry. But this is not the method of Bhikkham means collection. And he called, there was another sannyasi there, Puri Maharaj, he called him. And he asked, you bring your collection for the day. So Puri Maharaj had gone out, and in his Victoria, he'd gone out collecting as a traditional sannyasi. And he collected some a few vegetables and some rice and a few spices. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura took his Victoria, and he said, he accepted it. He said, yes, I accept it. This is Sattvic. Your collection, that is Raja, that is a mode of passion. This is not the process. Previously to that sannyasi in Bombay, he told them that this is not our process of collection. He told them that we should go, it's not our aim simply to take some money from people, but we should speak something to them about Krishna. And then if they're satisfied, then if they give something, then we can accept their donation. It's not our process simply to collect money by any means. So, this time in Kata, he told Bodhai Maharaj, you take all these things back. I'm not accepting it. Of course, we shouldn't misunderstand. Because our Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, he accepted funds and preaching in different times, place and circumstances. He was preaching lectures who had no idea of Vedic culture. So if for such people to give a donation by any means is good for them, even by hook or by crook. So different time places we shouldn't understand. So anyway, this Bodhai Maharaj, Jyoti Shekhar, he was a young brahmachari. So one time, one queen of that time they were in the British times, there were so many kings and queens in India who ruled, so many kings who used to rule different areas under the British. So in one area of Orissa there was Ali, and the queen, the queen of Ali was the Ali Rani. Rani means queen. She came to the mart in Kata for one festival. And Jyoti Shekhar Prabhu was serving prasad at that festival, and everyone was in a line taking prasad together. And Bodhai Maharaj thought, well, let's please the queen some more because she's an important person. So he gave one very nice mango to Jyoti Shekhar Prabhu, and he said, you give that to the queen. So Jyoti Shekhar was a little disturbed because in India, everybody knows the culture that whoever you are, if you're all sitting together to take prasad, you don't give one person something special. Everyone takes the same thing. So he's a little disturbed that people will think there's something wrong with this. So even though he's a sannyasi, he protested and said, well, how can I do this? That is against the etiquette, it's the wrong thing. So Bodhai Maharaj became very angry with him and started chastising him. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur heard that, and he asked what had happened, and Bodhai Maharaj explained, and he said that no, he said to Bodhai Maharaj, no, you are wrong. You are wrong. This boy is correct. So after that, he never called Bodhai Maharaj by the name Bodhai Maharaj. He used to call him Ali Rani Sannyasi. And he said, are you a sannyasi of the Gaudiya Math, or are you an Ali Rani Sannyasi? Are you a sannyasi who is a follower of this Ali Rani, Queen of Ali? So he always used And actually, he made many sannyasis for preaching, but several of them he became disappointed with them because they were very interested in prestige, and they were very concerned who can give the best lecture and they could become famous as a big preacher. He was specifically very upset with Bon Maharaj, who was sent to England, and then he came back advertising himself as a great preacher, but he hadn't fulfilled the mission, and in so many ways. So he used to say, many times he used to say, Koridam Sannyashi ho yeno vinashi, means I made them sannyasis, but they had simply become sense enjoyers. So he was disappointed in them. One time, one of his followers, there were two householders in particular who were very scholarly and good writers, and Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur liked them very much. One was Nishikant Sanya of Tishikara, who was a professor in Provincial College in Kata, but who he used to, every month he used to give all his salary. He was getting a good salary. He used to bring all his money to Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur. And Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur used to give him a little bit back, whatever he needed for his maintenance. So he was living a very poor life, even though he had plenty of money, good income. Another one was Sundarananda Vidyadino. He was a very scholarly person. He wrote many books. Of course, later on, after the passing of Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, there was some controversy, a lot of controversy. But during the manifest presence of Siddhanta Thakur, please do not say names. We now start to say names, but difficult talking. When there's problems with many. Anyway, he wrote many books, and he helped Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur very much in his writing, and he was the editor of the Gaudiya magazine. So, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, he was also very brilliant in his use of language. Many little sayings he used to call him. He used to say is that if anybody does, because even in his presence there was rivalry between different groups, which later that turned into a complete split in the Gaudiya Math. But even in his presence, there were two groups. So, in one of the groups was Sundarananda, and some people used to criticize him. But Sarasvati Thakur used to say that anyone who doesn't like Sundarananda, he is Kuchi. The Sundar means beautiful and Kuchi means ugly. So like this, so many followers he had. Of course, most of the followers of Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur were village people, less educated, but some of them were also very brilliant personalities. One of the brilliant personalities was Ananta Vasudeva. Later on, what happened afterwards is quite an amazing history. But during the presence of Sarasvati Thakur, Ananta Vasudeva was one of his constant companions, and he was a brilliant person. He was brilliant at kirtan, bhajan, and very learned. It was he who composed the prayers to Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur and all the other acharyas. And sometimes, while giving a lecture, Sarasvati Thakur, he would say, "What is that verse?" Ananta Vasudeva would say so. And Ananta Vasudeva and Sundarananda, they used to write the lectures while they were speaking, and later they would write it down, and then again Sarasvati Thakur would see them, and he would edit them, and like this, so many lectures became published in the Gaudiya magazine. So they used to say Ananta Vasudeva, he was the Ganesh of Sarasvati Thakur, because he used to write as he would speak. One time, one of